Chapter 1: The King's Law. Breathy cries rose and fell, echoing off the walls. Hands clutching, bodies moving in a relentless rhythm. The room throbbed with their rough sounds, their gasps and grunts, impossible to ignore. Not that it would have mattered. Lyra was forced to watch, forced to witness her mate take another female right in front of her. It wasn't the first time, not even close, and the pain never dulled. The bond made sure of that. His touch on another sent knives of agony through her. He knew. He enjoyed it. Devon, her mate, her alpha, wanted more power for his pack. An Omega who couldn't shift had no place in his plans. But he couldn't reject her. Not with the Lykan King's laws binding every alpha to their goddess-given mate under threat of being stripped of power. He had found his perfect match, the daughter of a powerful alpha, a would-be Luna with status to match his ambition. But first, he needed Lyra gone. He couldn't harm her, not without risking the king's wrath, so he got creative. Devon groaned as his body shuddered and he finished. He glanced at Lyra, just in time to see her eyes squeeze shut. His mouth twisted. He pulled away from the female and climbed off the bed. As always, Lyra stood tied to a pole in the middle room, bound so she couldn't turn her face away, even if she tried. Her skin went cold as he took a step toward her. She knew what came next. She'd been forbidden to look away during his couplings, and she'd been caught disobeying. Devon never showed mercy. He ripped a whip from its hook on the wall, cracked it through the air, and slashed it across her stomach. "Who said you could close your eyes?" His voice was ice. Lyra dropped her gaze and clenched her jaw, holding the sound in, swallowing the burn. "Look at me when I talk to you," Devon roared. She lifted her head. Hate simmered in her eyes. How much longer could she live like this, like a slave, no freedom, no schooling, nothing? What did he expect? That she'd kill herself just to tidy up his future? "Break the bond. Set me free." She spat in his face. "Fuck you." Red fury lit his eyes. The whip cracked again, fire licking across her middle. Pain rippled through her. "Who do you think you're talking to?" he snarled, grabbing her chin. His grip tightened until bone creaked. "You're a lowly Omega. Know your place." The she-wolf from the bed, Allison, alpha princess of Crimson Creek, slid down and sauntered over, a satisfied curve on her lips. She was the one Devon wanted as his Luna. She'd been waiting for him to be rid of his useless Omega. She'd always despised Omegas. Her mother had died of heartbreak after catching her father with one. How dare such low-born creatures show their faces to alphas, let alone royalty? Dregs of society. "Are you finally going to reject her?" Allison asked, eyes dragging over Lyra with open contempt. "You've kept her around long enough." Devon released Lyra's chin and stepped back. "I wish," he spat. "Don't forget the King's law. I can only reject her if she betrays me first." Lyra bit back a laugh. He was trying to bait her. He wanted her to snap, wanted her to storm off and take a lover the way he took his countless whores. But she knew better. He would get away with it. She wouldn't. And she wasn't throwing her life away, not after everything. She would get out. She would build a life without him. "Damn the laws," Allison hissed, glaring down at Lyra sprawled on the floor. If not for the Lykan King, she would have ended this tonight, but that would stain her precious reputation. She turned to Devon. "You'd better stop whipping her, unless you want the Lykan King to hear how you've been treating your mate." Devon stilled, then let the whip fall. The king was visiting tomorrow. Lyra needed to look unharmed. "Clean up," he snapped, untying her before stalking out with Allison on his arm. The door shut. Lyra's breath hitched, and pain slipped free in a low groan. For a heartbeat, she wanted to lie on the floor and let the ache smother her. But the sour, cloying stench of their coupling turned her stomach. Damn those beasts. I won't let them get away with this. She cleaned the room, every stain, every trace, until it was spotless. Then she dragged her aching body out of the Alpha's residence and headed toward her parents' home. What was left of it, anyway? A husk. Ruins since the strange sickness tore through their pack, killing everyone but her. That was when Devon had come, the savior she thought she'd found. She'd been 15. On her next birthday, she learned he was her mate. And when she turned out to be an Omega, he treated her like the dirt under his boot. Sometimes when the hurt climbed too high, she returned here. The wreckage grounded her, gave her a reason to keep breathing. I won't give up, she whispered into the empty rooms. She spoke to her parents as if they stood in the shadows, listening. It always eased something inside her. I won't die easy. I'll keep living, and one day I'll make them pay for everything. The Lykan King would be here tomorrow. The perfect opening. She would expose Devon's hypocrisy, slip free of his grasp, and then she would rebuild her pack and take back everything he'd tried to break. Chapter 2: The King's Curse. In the boxing ring, 2 males circled, each waiting for the first opening. One was the Lykan King, Julian. The other, his beta, Asher. Both were tall and cut from muscle, but Julian moved like wind over stone. His punches, when they landed, carried a force that made the ropes tremble. Sometimes Asher didn't even see them coming until it was too late. The king, however, saw everything. He deflected, slipped, or blocked with effortless precision. No one had beaten the Lykan King. Not yet. He was too fast, too powerful. His instincts in human form were as sharp as his wolf's, near invincible. So when Asher's fist connected with the king's jaw, the beta froze for a heartbeat, stunned by his own success. Julian shook his head as if surfacing from a heavy sleep. A shadow flashed through his eyes, dark and dangerous, and any flicker of triumph in Asher vanished. Had he angered the king? Stepping forward, he lowered his arms. I'm sorry, I didn't. I want to be alone, Julian said, turning away. You can leave. Asher gave a sharp nod and slipped from the ring, then out of the room. Julian braced his forearms on the ropes, breath steady, shoulders tight. He dragged a hand down his face and let out a low, frustrated sigh. He'd been distracted. That's why Asher had landed the punch. Lately, the curse gnawed at his focus, worse with every passing day. Time was running out. He left the ring and headed for the bathroom. In front of the mirror, he studied his torso, hard lines, earned strength. Everything in Alpha should be strong, commanding, fast. Everywhere he went, respect followed without question, and yet a strange, merciless curse hung over him like a storm. If he didn't find his mate before his 30th birthday, his power would diminish. He could even die. He was 29. Each day brought that date closer. The urgency pressed at his ribs. He had searched for her for years, combing through packs across the kingdom. Nothing. The longer he looked, the more the silence taunted him. Would he find her in the little time left? The bathroom door opened. A female Omega slave slipped inside, hands clasped demurely. Despite her gentle steps, her gaze dragged over him like a laser. Your Majesty, I'll help you undress, she murmured, moving closer. He met her eyes, no mistaking the hunger there. She hadn't come to help. She wanted him to pin her to the counter, lift her dress, and take what she offered. You work out so hard, she said, reaching for his chest. I'll prepare you a herbal bath if you wish. It's good for the muscles and... Julian snapped a hand up and caught her wrist before she could touch his pecs. "Leave," he said, ice cold. Her gaze dropped. "Yes, I apologize, Your Majesty." She turned and fled, quick, small, skittering like a mouse in a house fire. His mouth twisted with disdain as the door swung shut. Weak, pitiful, worthless. It sickened him when Omegas tried to curry favor, as if he might enjoy their company, as if there were any chance he'd let one of them stay by his side. He dropped his shorts and stepped under the shower. Hot water pounded across his shoulders, steam filling the room. Indulging himself wouldn't help. He needed to find his mate. Later, he joined his parents for dinner in the dining hall. "There you are," his mother said as he took his seat. A servant hurried to fill his wine glass. "Your father and I were just discussing your inspection tomorrow. You've never been to that pack before, right?" Julian nodded and sipped his wine. He knew where this was headed. Inspections kept alphas in line, but they served another purpose too, finding his mate. He'd visited almost every pack in the kingdom, if she wasn't among the few that remained. "We hope you'll finally meet your mate tomorrow," his mother went on softly. "We have been waiting for so long." He hoped so too. He was sick of the endless search, sick of waking under the weight of a future hanging over him like a guillotine. The next day, Julian arrived at the Red Moon Pack and was received by Alpha Devian. As always, the Alpha had arranged a ceremony fit to impress. They all did. Alphas tripped over themselves to please him, desperate to stay on his good side. The more they groveled, the more it grated. "Where's your mate?" Julian asked, noting the Luna's absence. Protocol dictated both Alpha and Luna welcome the king. A flicker of panic crossed Devon's face. Julian raised a brow. "You have one, right?" "Yes, Your Majesty," Devon said quickly, lowering his head. "But I'm afraid she could not make it. Please excuse us." "Why could she not make it?" Julian asked, voice flat. Devon hesitated. "I did not notice she was missing until you were about to arrive. I could not go looking for her then, so I received you alone." Asher scowled. How dare she disappear before the king's visit? Are you trying to insult his majesty? "I would not dare," Devon said, voice tight. Something urgent must have happened. She would not refuse to show up on purpose. Devon's beta rushed up, breathless. "Alpha, we found the Luna." Chapter 3. The King's Mate. The night before the Lykan King's visit, Lyra felt more exhausted than usual. There had been so many preparations for the ceremony to welcome the king, but she hadn't expected to feel this strained. Also, her neck throbbed as if bruised. Had Devon hit her there earlier? She was too tired to remember. She collapsed onto her bed and drifted into a restless sleep. Morning. Heat pressed at her side, the solid weight of a male body lying next to her. For a beat, she thought she must be dreaming. Seconds ticked by. The body stirred. Not a dream. Foreboding flooded her as she registered she was naked. Naked. She hadn't gone to bed naked, and what was a strange male doing in her bed? She clutched the cover and scooted back, putting space between them. The male's eyes opened. Shock flashed across his face. "What are you doing here?" Lyra demanded, scanning for a weapon. She'd seen him around the pack, but they weren't familiar. He looked around, dazed. He scrambled out of bed, revealing his nakedness. Lyra jerked her gaze away, mind racing. Her first instinct was to scream, but attention would only make things worse. Even if he'd snuck into her room, they would accuse her of sleeping with another male and betraying her mate. He searched for his clothes. The door swung open. Devon stepped into the room. Lyra's heart thundered. Her throat turned dry. And then, just when it couldn't get worse, the Lykan King entered after Devon. "What the hell is going on here?" Devon demanded, eyes flicking from her to the male. Lyra shook her head. "I don't know how he got into my room." "Is this your mate?" the king asked Devon, his gaze settling on Lyra with pure disgust. Her heart stung as if that look pierced straight through her. Oddly, it hurt more than watching that damn Devon take other she-wolves to his bed. "Yes, your majesty," Devon said, wearing a mask of sorrow. "I'm sorry you have to be subjected to such a sight." "I swear I did not do anything," Lyra said, reaching for the king's arm. He shoved her hand away at once. "Your majesty, please, believe me. I didn't betray the mate bond. I went to bed and woke up to find him here. I don't know what happened." "Guards, throw this man out. Now," Devon snapped. The guards surged forward and dragged the male from the room. "How dare you lie to his majesty," a feminine voice snapped. Allison stepped from behind the alpha and the king. "Everyone can see what's going on. Do you take us for fools?" Devon approached the bed with a tortured expression. "How could you do this to me? I'm your mate? How could you take another male right under my nose?" Lyra stared back, stunned by his tone. He looked like a devoted mate discovering his beloved's betrayal. She had to give it to him. He actually looked heartbroken. And that's when it clicked. It had to be a setup. While she'd been counting on the Lykan King's visit to set her free, Devon had planned to use it to get permission to reject her. "Your Majesty, please free Alpha Devon from this mate," Allison pleaded, bowing her head toward the king. "He has been nothing but kind to her, despite her being a cursed Omega, and this is how she treats him." Julian's shrewd eyes studied Lyra. Her gaze was locked on him, silently begging for help. His wolf growled, uneasy. Strange. His wolf rarely pitted lowly Omegas or the weak. Julian forced him down. He would not help anyone who betrayed the mate bond. He drew in a breath to speak and froze. A pleasant scent drifted from the female on the bed. His jaw tightened. "No, not this." "It could be her," his wolf murmured. "Our mate." Mate? This shameless, scheming Omega. He crushed the thought. She showed no sign of recognizing him as a mate. Good. He had no intention of having an Omega mate, let alone one with such rotten morals. "You have my permission," he told Devon. "You can reject her." "He's lying," Lyra burst out. "I don't have a lover. He's the one." Allison cut her off with a sharp slap. "How dare you talk back to your alpha in front of the king after what you've done? Have you no shame?" Lyra pressed a palm to her cheek as her eyes filled. "I didn't do anything wrong." "Look at her nerve, Your Majesty," Allison said. "Even when caught red-handed, she wants to play the victim. How can Alpha Devon lead the pack with such a female at his side?" "Shut up," Julian roared. His glare snapped to Allison, cold and lethal. "Who gave you the right to speak to me, she-wolf?" Terror flooded Allison. She dropped to her knees, bowing as the Lykan King's aura slammed into her like a physical force. Julian's jaw worked, irritation spiking with every breath. Lyra's tearful eyes only made it worse. "Claim your rejection. Now," he ordered, voice deep and final. Devon turned to Lyra. "I, Alpha Devon of the Red Moon Pack, reject you, Lyra Jenkins, as my mate." A jolt of pain ripped through Lyra as the bond wavered. She'd felt worse. To speed the break, she said, "I, Lyra Jenkins of the Blue Night Pack, accept the rejection of Alpha Devon of the Red Moon Pack." Julian's eyes widened the instant the words left her mouth. A rush of sweet mate scent flooded his lungs, stronger than before. How could it be? He pivoted, ready to leave, ready to get the hell out, when a strange jolt tore through him. At the same moment, Lyra turned toward him, surprise bright in her eyes. She felt it too. The fleeting thread he'd sensed before snapped taut, impossible to ignore or dismiss. This female, this shameless, mannerless Omega, was his mate? He stared at her, disbelieving. The word mate clawed up his throat, an urge he barely choked back. He would not claim her here. He would never have imagined this was who he'd been searching for all these years. Was the universe toying with him? "Let me teach her a proper lesson," Devon's beta growled, stepping forward. He drew his arm back to strike Lyra. Julian moved before thought. He stepped between them and hurled the beta into the wall. He hadn't meant to protect her, but his body reacted on its own instinct, written into bone and blood, as it should be. Mates were wired to defend each other against all harm. The room fell silent, stunned, no one having expected such a response from the Lykan king. Chapter 4: The Mysterious Box. "I will bring your rejected mate with me after the banquet," Julian announced later, after he, his beta, and Devon had retreated into a conference room. Devon frowned just for a heartbeat before smoothing his face. "I'm sorry, Your Majesty. I don't understand." Why would the Lykan king want a worthless Omega? There were enough slaves at the palace. Besides, Julian had looked thoroughly disgusted earlier when he'd observed Lyra. Why would he want her anywhere near him? "It's not your business to understand the king's mind," Julian's beta, Asher, groused. Devon knew that provoking the king would do him no good, but he couldn't let Lyra go with him. If she revealed Devon's abuse to the king toward her, his entire plan would be ruined, and he would suffer the king's wrath. "I apologize," he said carefully. "I'm only worried she isn't worthy to accompany Your Majesty. A filthy stray like her would only tarnish the king's reputation if seen anywhere near him. I have a few slaves more suitable for the palace that Your Majesty can choose from. Besides, there's a terrifying curse surrounding her. I believe the farther she is from the king, the better." Julian said nothing, his stoic gaze boring a hole into the opposite wall. Asher, remembering the king's reaction in Lyra's room, faced Devon again. "And yet you kept her around you." "I would not dare disobey the king's law," Devon replied. "She was my goddess-given mate. No matter what curse afflicts her, she was meant to be by my side." Asher's mouth twitched, though he held his tongue. This alpha was eager to be rid of his Omega mate. That much was obvious. Was he truly worried about the king's safety around the cursed she-wolf, or did he just not want his rejected mate to leave? Why? Whatever. It didn't matter. Asher had seen it, the spark of hunger in Julian's eyes when he'd looked at Lyra. The king wasn't simply searching for another slave. He stepped closer to Devon, eyes hard. "And you think the Lykan king himself can't handle a little cursed Omega she-wolf?" Devon swallowed, an uneasy smile flickering. "Of course not." "The king is taking the she-wolf," Asher said, voice flat as stone. "Put her in the king's quarters and get her ready to leave." "I'll arrange it right away," Devon said, backing down. Later, Devon entered the king's bedroom, where Lyra was staying. Try as he might, he couldn't understand the king's fixation with her. Lyra's eyes hardened with hate the moment she saw him. Too bad the king was unusually interested. Devon had planned to punish her properly for her so-called betrayal, a useful example for other Omegas. "What are you doing here?" Lyra demanded, folding her arms tight across her body. So she still didn't know her place. She must think the king's protection gave her leave to talk back. Devon's hand itched to slap her, but he forced it still. He remembered how the king had shoved Rick, Devon's beta, aside when he tried to strike her. Why in hell was the Lykan king protecting her when he'd clearly been disgusted by her behavior? He stepped in close, towering. She didn't flinch, as if to show she wasn't afraid anymore. "You'd better keep your mouth shut," he hissed. "The king won't believe anything that comes out of your filthy mouth." Lyra's jaw clenched. He might be right, but he was also afraid the Lykan king would learn the truth, and the consequences for deceiving the Lykan king were far more dire than rejecting her without permission had ever been. "We'll see about that," she said quietly. Devon's eyes narrowed. "Don't think I can't touch you now that you're leaving? Don't forget, I still have your parents' belongings. If you want them back, you'll keep quiet." Unease rippled through her. Her thoughts dragged her back to the time after her pack's tragedy. An elderly mother wolf had pressed a box into her hands, claiming it was from her parents. They'd wished her to open it on her 20th birthday, only 3 months away. If the box was damaged, it would bring great disaster to the pack. Since coming to the Red Moon pack, Devon had taken custody of it. She couldn't risk losing it or defying her parents' last warning. "I won't say anything," she told him. Devon left, satisfied. Just as Lyra was about to lie down and rest, the door opened again. The Lykan king strode in, power rolling off him in waves. "Mate, mine," Julian growled, eyes raking over her with raw hunger. A tremor ran through her core. Oh, goddess, why? She pulled in a breath, trying to steady herself. The moon goddess had been too kind to her. Her first mate had been a powerful alpha, and now, after a hellish rejection, her second mate was the even mightier Lykan king. But what would he do to her in the end? Lyra couldn't bear the intensity of his gaze any longer. "King," she asked, voice barely steady, "do you intend to accept me?" Chapter 5, The Black Wolf. "Strip off all your clothes, slave," Julian commanded. Lyra froze, stunned, but she obeyed. No one defied a king and lived without consequences. When she removed her last undergarment, Julian stepped in. His large hands slid from her shoulders to her collarbone, then down toward her chest. The grip turned cruel, pinching hard, pain sparking through her. Lyra's body trembled uncontrollably. A strangled sound escaped her. "Please, don't do this, my king." "Don't you like this, slave?" Julian sneered, his voice cold enough to burn. "This is all a misunderstanding," Lyra whispered, desperate to explain. "Enough," Julian roared. "I won't believe the excuses of a shameless whore who dared betray her mate." Tears blurred her vision. The moon goddess had given her the best fate, and the worst. "Reject me, my king," Lyra said, chin lifting, stubborn to the last. "No, I won't." He flung her to the floor. His tone was ice. "You will endure far worse than this, slave." Julian left her there. His beta, Arthur, entered a moment later and brought her to the car. When Lyra saw Julian ahead, she instinctively shrank farther into her seat, away from him. What would she ultimately face? The car ride to the palace sat heavy with silence. No one spoke. This should have been the perfect moment to unmask Devon, to spit the truth. But even if she ignored his warning, would the king believe her? Julian's disgust rolled off him in waves. He didn't need to look at her for her to feel it. He never glanced her way, only worked on his tablet, face carved from stone. Lyra stole a few looks when she dared. He was tall, handsome, built like a fortress. She swallowed hard and tore her gaze away. She wouldn't let his face crowd her senses. He didn't like her. A male like him, an alpha, a Lykan king, had to loathe being mated to an omega. Yet he was the Lykan king, the one who enforced the law forbidding alphas from rejecting their mates. He wouldn't break his own law, right? After a long drive, the palace rose before them, grand and terrible and beautiful. Lyra stared, speechless. As they walked in, people bowed and greeted their king. Curious eyes flicked to Lyra, whispers rising like wind in dry grass. Was she his mate? Had he finally found her? Julian ignored the murmurs until a maid stepped forward, studying Lyra. "Welcome back, Your Majesty," the maid said. "Did you find your mate? Is this her?" "No," Julian snapped, irritation sharp as glass. "She is not." He turned to his beta. "Assign her a room in the servants' dorm. She stays there with the others." Arthur bowed. "Yes, Your Majesty." Julian stalked away without a single look in Lyra's direction. If any part of her had hoped he might claim her, it died then and there. He was ashamed of a mate like her. He didn't even want the world to know she existed. Arthur led her to the servants' dorm and into a small room with little more than a bed. Lyra sat at the edge, numb. The Lykan king she'd hoped would save her from a brutal life treated her the same as her former mate. That night, the full moon climbed high. Lyra lay awake, staring at the ceiling. Sleep wouldn't come. Deep in the night, when the dorm had gone quiet, strange sounds drifted in from outside. A low, rough noise, like a wounded thing or a warning. She lay still, listening. When the sounds didn't stop, she slipped from the bed and crept out, careful not to wake anyone. Part of her wanted to hide under the thin blanket and pretend she heard nothing. But something she couldn't name, pulled her toward the dark. "It's probably nothing," she told herself. "Maybe someone needs help." The night was bright under the full moon. She followed the sounds to the back of the building, heart ticking fast. The farther she went, the louder it grew. Leaves rustled behind a flower bush. Before she could step closer, a shadow exploded into view and a heavy weight slammed her to the ground. Air punched from her lungs. A massive black wolf loomed over her, eyes burning red in the moonlight. Fear tore through her. He was male, alpha, and his sheer size crushed her into the earth. His crimson gaze swept over her, and terror washed her cold. This presence, this power, was worse than anything Devon had ever made her feel. The wolf panted hard, as if fighting something inside himself. Lyra stared back, paralyzed. A choked squeak left her as his paw raked forward, claws catching at the neckline of her dress. "Please don't," she braced for pain. Fabric ripped. The sound was sharp, brutal. She tried to clutch the torn pieces together, but he growled and yanked again, tearing cloth away until the night air hit her skin. "Let me go," she sobbed, curling in on herself, arms wrapping tight. "Please, let me go." Wasn't the palace supposed to be the safest place in the kingdom? "Submit," a rough voice roared in her mind. Chapter 6. The Stupid Bond. Lyra froze at the sight of the Lykan king with his head between her thighs. For a heartbeat, nothing. It felt unreal, a warped dream. Earlier, the king had been too disgusted to look at her, let alone touch her. What did he mean by this? Her body jolted as his mouth found her. Bracing on one hand, she shoved at his shoulder with the other. "Stop." Her voice sounded thin and far away, like it didn't belong to her. Instead of stopping, he bit the sensitive inside of her thigh. The sense she'd caught after Devon rejected her surged up, sharp, undeniable, flooding her senses. Her body recognized it, her wolf recognized it, and she did too, and it stripped away her will. A mate's scent was a drug, potent, inescapable, and she was getting intoxicated fast. "On your back," Julian commanded, his breath warm against her exposed skin. Lyra's core clenched, heat blooming like a flower. She fell onto her back, her body obeying like a puppet. His hand pressed into her stomach, pinning her as his mouth returned to her center. She bit her lip as sensation flickered through her. Hot, overwhelming, everywhere. He let out a low, guttural sound that vibrated against her, raising goosebumps over her arms. Her mind spiraled for a different reason this time. I can't let this happen. I can't. And yet, when he focused on her most sensitive point, she tilted toward him, seeking more. Stupid Bond. After the way he'd looked at her like trash, she shouldn't feel anything. But the pull between mates didn't care about should or could. And she, an Omega, was nothing against a Lykan king. What did she do to deserve two bastard alpha mates? Against them, she was powerless. But his mouth was relentless, heat and breath and sharp little stings that blurred into too much. Air punched out of her. Her hand reached for him, wanting him to stop and not stop at the same time. A broken cry tore free when he teased that spot again, soft, taunting, sending her nerves into freefall. More heat pooled low, spreading until everything felt fever bright. Never, never had she been this undone. She wanted to beg him to give her something more. She wanted him inside. The more he toyed with that point, the more achingly empty she felt. His pace quickened. Pressure built, tightened, crested. When it broke over her, her back arched off the ground and white scattered behind her eyes. She drifted, weightless, faintly aware of him pulling away. The loss of warmth was immediate, and it stung. She kept her eyes closed, wishing he'd vanish before she had to face him. As the rush ebbed, the cold crept in, leaving her exposed. Small. Eventually, she pulled herself together, curling up and hugging her knees to cover herself. Silly, really, after what he'd just done. If you've not been using contraceptives, start now, he said, looming over her like an angry, dark cloud. Goddess knows a whore like you who sleeps with anyone needs it. Lyra ground her teeth as anger pooled in her belly, slow and steady. His tone, his words, fuck, she hated him. I did not. Julian's scoff cut her off. I have to give it to you. You've got some nerve. A lowly Omega sneaking around behind her alpha mate's back. Who raised you? I never slept with anyone, she said. She stood, forgetting modesty. He was wrong about her, and she was done letting him treat her like she was nothing. Taking a step toward him, she continued, I have no idea how. Who do you think you are talking to? He snapped, his tone cutting through her like a blade. Get on your fucking knees. Lyra gulped. Hands fisting, she sank to her knees, the rough ground biting into her skin. I'll be selecting my Luna beginning tomorrow, he said after a taut silence. Prepare for it. Once I find the appropriate candidate, you'll be the Queen's handmaiden and my mistress. For a moment, Lyra thought she'd misheard. Selecting a Luna? She was his mate. Why bring her to the palace if he never intended to make her queen? Was it to spite her? Why? They didn't know each other. If he had no intention of crowning her, wouldn't it make more sense to reject her and forget she existed? He could have any woman in the kingdom as a mistress. Why drag her here just to break her down? Did you hear what I said? He demanded. Yes, she whispered. You'll address me properly. She swallowed. Yes, Your Majesty. He looked down at her for a few beats, then turned and stalked off. Lyra waited until he disappeared before standing. The night air bit at her skin, and her dress was useless against it. She slipped back inside the dorm building, tears burning hot in her eyes. Why did she have such rotten luck? Why would the moon goddess give her a fragile body that couldn't shift, then throw two terrible mates at her on top of it? How was she supposed to survive, make a life, if she kept getting hurled from one disaster to another? When her entire pack had been wiped out by a mysterious disease and Devon saved her, she thought she'd met her savior. And then, when the Lykan king helped her leave Devon, she thought the same. She'd been wrong both times. "I mean it," Ray said, more convincing now. "The moon goddess arranging this must have meaning. I believe this is the moon goddess's trial for us. We are destined for greatness, not an ordinary life. I believe our mates will ultimately accept us." Accept her? No. Once she was strong enough, she wouldn't need anyone. Lyra stared into the dark, promising herself she would stop expecting anything from anyone. Julian's rejection would come soon. She could feel it. For now, she only had to wait. Please, let him find his queen quickly, she prayed. Chapter 7. The Servant's Wrath. When Lyra woke the next morning, a strange female's face hovered inches from hers, pinched, disdainful. "You must think you're on vacation to still be sleeping at this hour," the female said, lips twisting in scorn. Lyra blinked hard and forced herself upright. Palace walls. Last night. Julian. The memories streaked through her mind, then she shoved them away. "What's the time?" she asked, eyeing the servant standing over her. The servant scoffed and tossed something at her. A maid's uniform. "Time to get your lazy ass out of bed and get working, princess." Thea. Lyra recognized her now, longtime palace servant, the one who looked after Julian since childhood. She carried herself like the palace was hers to run. "Sorry, I didn't know the schedule," Lara said. The last thing she needed was another enemy. If everything else went to hell, at least she didn't want a repeat of Devon's pack, ostracized at every turn. Thea's scoff was sharp. "You must think you're something special because the king brought you here." She waved a dismissive hand at the narrow room. "Look around, darling. You're nothing but a slave. Do as I say, or you'll be in trouble." Lyra kept her face still. This one already hated her. "Okay," she murmured. "Why are you still in bed?" Thea snapped. "Get dressed and meet me in the living room in 2 minutes. Everything in there needs to be squeaky clean before everyone wakes up. Move." Lyra slid out of bed and pulled on the uniform. Thea left before she'd finished, and Lyra had to jog after her. She had no idea where the living room even was. Once there, Thea thrust a list into her hands. Clean, buff, polish the fixtures, dust everything, vacuum the floors. Lyra was used to cleaning, but not a room this enormous. It was ornate, every surface gleaming, every detail shouting palace. And she had 1 hour. 1 hour to do a job fit for 3 people. No point complaining. Thea would only bite. Lyra nodded, grabbed the supplies, and got to work. Her mind slipped back to Julian as she scrubbed. She'd always thought the Lykan king was strict but fair. Turned out he was just another alpha with an inflated ego. What did she expect it? In werewolf society, the strong looked down on the weak. The weak weren't even citizens. They were a blight. As long as there were alphas, betas, gammas, there would be omegas. And omegas were treated like trash. Maybe the Lykan king was fair, but not to lowly wolves like her. She was still wondering if he'd meant it, selecting a queen, making her his mistress, when a sharp shriek tore through the room. A crash followed. Lyra jumped back as something clipped her foot. A white shard skittered across the floor. Her stomach sank. While she'd been lost in thought, she'd knocked over a vase. Thea, source of the shriek, stormed across the room, fury twisting her face. "You stupid bitch. I knew you were good for nothing." She seized Lyra by the hair and shook her. "Do you have any idea how long that vase has been in this palace?" Lyra dropped the supplies and grabbed Thea's wrist, trying to pry her off. "I'm sorry. It was a mistake." Thea released her hair. Lyra stumbled back, then Thea's palm flashed. The slap cracked across Lyra's cheek. "There's no room for mistakes here, you hear me?" Tears burned. Ears rang. Lyra clutched her cheek and whispered, "Yes, ma'am." "You'll pay for that vase," Thea said, jabbing Lyra in the forehead with one finger. "Again and again. Even if it takes your entire pathetic life, you'll pay. Do you know how much it costs?" With each poke, Lyra staggered back until her hips hit a chest of drawers. "From the moment I saw you, I knew you didn't belong here," Thea hissed. "And I'll make you wish you'd never shown up." She stepped back with a satisfied sniff. "Finish up here, then get to the kitchen. The floors need a thorough scrubbing." By the time Lyra finished the living room, her whole body throbbed. Thea checked on her more than once, each time finding some reason to scold her, and hit her again. In the kitchen, breakfast was already done. Apparently, Thea had told the cooks to leave everything for Lyra, not just the floors. Piles of pans, grease-slick counters, utensils stacked to the ceiling. "Lunch prep begins in an hour," Thea informed her. "You'd best be done by then." Lyra stared at the mess. "On my own?" Thea sneered. "Do you want me to help you or something?" Lyra swallowed. Impossible. Her arms felt like lead. How was she supposed to scrub cast iron? She lifted her chin and met Thea's eyes. "I can't do this by myself. I need help." Thea's lips pressed into a thin line, trembling. "What did I tell you? You do what I say. Period. I don't care how." "If you want the kitchen ready for lunch, you need more cleaners," Lyra said, steady. "No one can finish this alone." Thea's gaze darted around, wild. Her hand closed on the nearest thing, a frying pan. She charged, the pan raised like a weapon. Lyra scrambled back. The pan whooshed past, missing her by an inch. Her heel skidded on a slick patch. She went down hard, breath punched from her lungs. Thea didn't stop. She surged forward, pan lifted again. For a heartbeat, Lyra thought, this is it. This is where I die, on a greasy kitchen floor, beaten to death with cast iron by an irate servant. And here I was, thinking the alphas in my life were the real threat. Her eyes squeezed shut. The blow never landed. A harsh male voice cut through the kitchen. "What do you think you're doing?" Lyra's eyes flew open. Asher had Thea's wrist in a steel grip, the pan frozen inches from Lyra's face. "I can't stand her," Thea spat. Instead of doing as she's told, she talks back. Asher wrenched the pan from her hand. "So you were going to kill her? Do you know who brought her here?" Thea's head dropped. "Yes." "And yet you dare do as you please with her." His voice went cold. "Go reflect on your actions in solitary confinement." Thea's jaw ticked. Her hands trembled at her sides. "Yes, Beta Asher." She turned and left, shoulders slumped despite the tilt of her chin. Lyra's stomach twisted. She hated to think what Thea would do to get back at her for being humiliated like that. She looked up at Asher, ready to thank him, then stopped. The ice in his eyes made her freeze. Handsome, yes, but there was a chill there that bit to the bone. He hadn't saved her because he liked her. Of course he hadn't. He'd been there when Devon framed her with that man in her bed. He had every reason to hate her, too. "I advise you not to cause trouble in the royal palace," he said, making no move to help her up. "This is not your former pack where you do whatever you want. Do you understand?" "Yes, Beta Asher." "Get up and get back to work. You're in charge of preparing lunch for Gloria, the daughter of the alpha of the luminous pack. Keep that in mind, and don't serve anything unpleasant." "Yes," Beta Asher. He turned and strode out, leaving her on the floor with the mess and the echo of his footsteps. Just great. Not only the cleaning, now lunch for some spoiled alpha princess. Her thoughts ground to a halt. Gloria, one of the Luna candidates Julian had mentioned last night. As her freedom neared, a small smile tugged at Lyra's lips. She set the lunch prep in motion, tasting as she went, making sure every dish sang, then slipped out, heading toward Grea's room. Chapter 8, The Troublemaker. Julian barely heard his gamma, Kyle, droning on about the Royal Pack's latest financial report. His mind was elsewhere, on last night, on Lyra. Her scent clung to him, taunting him. He could almost taste her again, and heat stirred low in his body. Hours had passed, and still, she lingered on his tongue. Why the hell was he still thinking about it? She was nothing special. He'd had his share of sweet, eager women before. Better than some whoring Omega. Wonder if that's because she is your mate, his wolf, Yuri, said dryly. Be honest, you want to devour her. Julian ground his teeth and said nothing. It didn't matter if she was his mate or not. Fine. He couldn't deny it. The night had been out of this world. Perfect, even. When he first met her, he wouldn't have soiled his hands touching a dirty whore like her. She was beneath him in a dozen ways. But when she had appeared out of nowhere last night, when his body was under the pull of the full moon, his attraction had hit like a freight train. In that moment, she was everything he wanted. Her scent alone drove him mad. It didn't help that she had such a beautiful, sinfully irresistible body, and the way she'd sounded when she moaned. Fuck. No wonder she wasn't satisfied with just her mate. With that face and that body, males would be tripping over themselves to get her attention. The thought of her with another male soured his mouth and reminded him exactly why she wasn't a good fit for him. Why don't you just claim her? Yuri prodded. I cannot accept an Omega as the kingdom's queen, Julian said flatly. That would be disastrous. You enforce the law about mates, and you're going to break your own? Yuri pressed. Who said I'm rejecting her? Julian shot back. Have you forgotten the stupid curse? I need her to avoid it. I don't know why the moon goddess stuck me with someone as useless as her, but I can't disobey. The door to the meeting room opened and Asher stepped in. Gloria is here, he said. She's waiting in the living room. Gloria, the luminous Pack Alpha's daughter, a potential future queen, but she wasn't the she-wolf on his mind. What about Lyra? He asked casually, leaning back in his chair. Asher made a sound in his throat. Didn't take her long to cause trouble. She's been assigned to the kitchen. She's in charge of lunch for you and your guest. Julian gave a curt nod. Already causing trouble? Did she think she was still in her old pack, free to do whatever she wanted? Why her out of thousands of she-wolves in his kingdom? Why the hell did it have to be her? A few minutes later, Julian entered the living room. Irritation flickered as he felt Gloria's gaze rake over him like he was a cut of meat. Of course. With his mate absent for years after his transformation, powerful packs had lined up to offer their daughters as his Luna. Gloria's father, Alpha Ander, had been especially aggressive about pushing his daughter to become queen. Julian could admit Gloria was a strong candidate. The luminous pack was closest to the royal family. Many assumed they'd end up together. If not for his curse, he might have given up the search and mated with her years ago. Alpha Ander thought he was wasting time. He had no idea about the curse. Now that Julian had found his mate and the curse's shadow could finally lift, he could actually consider the marriage. Your Majesty, Gloria said, rising with a small bow. Her dress screamed money, and her designer perfume hit him from a mile off. An unwelcome thought slipped in. He preferred Lyra's clean, wild scent. Julian nodded and sat, crossing one leg over the other. Gloria hesitated, still standing. What, did she expect a welcome kiss? A polished smile slid into place as she sat, chin up, eyes calculating. "It's been a while since we saw each other," she said. "I've been busy," Julian replied. "Of course. You're the king." She pressed a hand to her chest, looking wounded. "Thank you for seeing me today. My father was beginning to think I'd offended you. This will ease his mind." Julian wondered how Alpha Ander would react when he formally refused Gloria's bid to be queen. He'd been in the room less than a minute, and he already knew it was a no. They traded polite talk about the kingdom's affairs. Then the hairs on Julian's arms lifted. Someone else had entered. Lyra came into view in a maid's uniform, pushing a trolley. His gaze tracked her as she set the table. Focused, efficient. A flash of creamy thighs under moonlight flooded his mind, and heat pooled low and hot. "Fuck." She moved to the sitting area, head bowed, eyes on the floor. "Your Majesty, lunch is ready." Julian rose and offered his hand to Gloria like the perfect gentleman. "May I?" Surprise flickered, but she brightened and placed her hand in his. Once she stood, Julian slipped his hand around her waist and met her eyes. "Let's eat." Gloria's breath hitched. Their bodies pressed close. His fingers splayed possessively across her middle. Julian glanced past her, to Lyra. She was no longer playing the Miko Mega. Her eyes were locked on them, lips slightly parted. It made him want to push her further. He lifted his other hand to Gloria's face, fingertips grazing her chin. He leaned in, mouth brushing her ear. "You look beautiful." Gloria set a hand against his chest. "Thank you. You're quite handsome yourself, but I'd rather not do this in front of her." The way she said her dripped disdain for the Omega standing 3 feet away. Gloria turned and glared at Lyra, who still watched them openly. "What do you think you're looking at?" Instead of looking away and apologizing like Omegas usually did, the maid held her gaze. Gloria exhaled hard, stepped out of Julian's hold, and stalked toward Lyra. "Why is there such a mannerless servant in the royal palace? How dare you look at me like that?" "Like what?" Lyra asked, cool, sharp. It shocked Julian. She really was a troublemaker. Gloria gasped. The soft, innocent facade she'd worn with Julian shattered, fury twisting her features. She swung and slapped Lyra so hard the other female hit the floor. "How dare you talk back to me? Do you know who I am?" Gloria snarled. "Get your pathetic face out of my sight." Julian stepped in, placing himself between them, looking down at Lyra. Gloria, seething, addressed him instead. "I can't believe this. I want her punished and thrown out of the palace. How can such a shameless thing stand in the king's presence?" He ignored her and focused on Lyra. "What do you think?" Lyra looked up, anger warring with confusion in her eyes. She stayed silent. Julian gestured toward Gloria. "I told you you'd help me select the future queen. What do you think of her?" "Is this a joke?" Gloria snapped. Lyra's gaze didn't leave Julian. "I don't think she deserves to set foot in the palace." Gloria stared, speechless. Never in her life had an Omega, let alone a servant, spoken like that to her. She lunged for Lyra, but Julian caught her arm and held her back. "What is this?" she demanded of the Lykan king, disbelief roughening her voice. "You heard her," Julian said. "You should leave." Gloria's jaw dropped. "What? Do you want me to repeat myself?" "You must be kidding. Why would?" She caught a look at Lyra and laughed, brittle. "Why would the king require a servant's opinion?" The king does whatever he pleases, Julian told her. He released her arm and stepped back. That'll be all. After a heartbeat of stunned silence, Gloria spun on her heel and stormed out. With her gone, Julian looked down at Lyra, still on the floor. Are you going to get up or not? She pushed up on her hands and rose. He had to admit, he was surprised she'd said it out loud. Nerve. Too much of it. Most servants would have kept their mouths shut. They knew their place. An Omega advising the king, speaking out of turn to higher-ranked wolves, was unheard of. Did she think she was special because she was his mate? And the way she looked at him, unflinching, it made his blood heat. She didn't retreat when he stepped in. It was as if she were daring him. Go on, then. Yeah? He'd see about that. He snarled and wrapped his hand around her throat, fingers curving hard into her neck. Fire dimmed in her eyes. You deserve to be punished for that. Her throat bobbed under his palm as she swallowed. When he inhaled, he caught the edge of her fear, thin, sharp, no matter how she tried to hide it. Good. She should be afraid. Very. Why? She whispered. You asked me. His grip tightened, cutting off most of her air. Do you think you're in any position to drive away someone who might become my future Luna? I didn't, you. She broke off, dragging for breath. Julian sighed, lifted his free hand, and clamped her chin. Nothing gentle in it. You need to be disciplined. He leaned in, lips at her ear. And I'll do it personally. Chapter 9. The Punishment. That night, Lyra lay awake, eyes open to the dark, sleep a distant shore she couldn't reach. Julian's words kept echoing, relentless, filling her with a low, cold dread. You need to be disciplined, and I'll do it personally. A shiver ran down her spine, just as it had when he'd said it. Dangerous. Sinister. Worst of all, she had no idea what he intended. Would he hit her like Devon? Starve her? Lock her away for weeks? Her mind felt rubbed raw from circling the same questions all day, trying to understand his thinking. He had asked for her opinion, done as she suggested, then accused her of forgetting her place. Was he toying with her? Why would the Lykan king ask a slave for an opinion? Or was he simply looking for an excuse to antagonize her? She'd reprimanded Gloria in the heat of the moment, forgetting the consequences. She shouldn't have. But something about the way they were all over each other, about the way Gloria looked at her like she was a pesky bug, had snapped a wire inside her. So she'd said what was in her head and let caution fly. She was still stunned he hadn't ordered the guards to discipline her on the spot or left it to Gloria to choose the punishment. Why risk upsetting the daughter of one of the most powerful alphas in the kingdom for her? Maybe he didn't hate her as much. Maybe he cared. Lyra shook her head. No. Just because his methods weren't Devon's didn't mean anything. He regarded her with pure disdain. Believing otherwise would be foolish, wishful thinking. Maybe he'll forget, she told herself. He must be busy with affairs of the kingdom. If I don't get into trouble. Her thoughts stalled as the door to her room opened. She knew it was him before he stepped through. She went still. He switched on the light. She sprang out of bed and stood beside it, hands clasped in front of her, eyes down. Your Majesty. Was this it? Discipline tonight while the palace slept? If he meant to kill her and dump her body, he wouldn't need an excuse, not for an Omega slave. Something in his hand caught her eye. A flogger. Leather tassels pooled like a shadow at one end. So he was going to whip her after all. She swallowed, bracing for a familiar pain. Not here in the dorms, please. She'd rather the others didn't hear. Kneel. His voice was winter, cold and hard. She dropped to her knees. The thin nightgown did nothing against the floor. Her hands bunched the fabric at her sides, teeth closing on her lip. "It's fine. Bite down. Don't make a sound." He circled behind her. She waited for the telltale swish of leather through air. Instead, his footsteps came back around. She could feel his gaze on her, measuring, a hunter deciding when to strike. The flogger landed soft against her shoulder. She flinched. "Remove this." She glanced up. "What?" Did I stutter? Memory flashed, him tearing her dress the night before. If this was discipline, why spare her the humiliation? Her hands shook as she grabbed the hem of her nightgown and pulled it over her head. No bra, her chest bared at once. She set the gown on the bed and waited, jaw clenched. He moved again, dragging the tassels across her skin. Chest, back, the curve of her neck. She hated the slow, deliberate path of it. Just get on with it. "What were you saying about the man in your bed?" he asked from behind. The handle rested on her shoulder. The tails fell over her chest. The question caught her off guard. Still, this might be her only chance to speak. "I didn't sleep with him," she said. "I woke up and found him there, just before you walked in. Somebody framed me." "Who would frame you?" "Alpha Devon," she said. "He wanted to reject me and needed a reason, so he made it look like I'd—" She steadied her voice. "So you'd give him permission." "And why did he want to reject you?" Did he really not see? Like he said, I'm an Omega with a curse. He didn't want me. Julian stepped in front of her and tipped her chin up with the flogger's handle. "Really? Not because you were being a little whore around the pack?" He didn't believe a word. Heat and frustration coiled tight in her gut. "No," she said, fierce. "He was the one behaving like that. He tied me up and made me watch him with other females. When I refused, he hit me. You can see the marks on my back. He abused me for 3 years. I was his mate, but he treated me worse than a slave." One corner of his mouth lifted, scornful. He stepped back. "You're quite the actress." "I'm not lying." The lash snapped against her chest. Not hard, but sharp enough to sting. "I don't like liars." "I'm not." It bit her a second time, harder. Her hands flew up on instinct. "Drop them," he growled. Her arms fell to her sides. "On the bed, on your stomach." Lyra rose and climbed onto the mattress. The cords dragged along her calves, toward her thighs, then vanished for a heartbeat. They came down hard across her backside. She gasped, fingers knotting in the sheets. "That's for lying to your king." "I didn't lie." Another strike. "He must have hit you because you don't know when to shut up." The leather trailed lower, toward the heat between her thighs. "Spread your legs." Lyra hesitated. "If you don't believe me, you can ask around the pack. Everyone knows what he did to me." "Are you deaf?" His voice cut like a blade. She swallowed and obeyed, feeling exposed despite the scrap of fabric that remained. The bed dipped as he climbed on, one knee slotting between hers. He gripped the edge of her underwear and tore it with a single, brutal tug. "Did you go to other males because your mate didn't like touching you?" His palm smoothed over her hip, lingering. "You were desperate." "No," she choked. "You hated him for looking down on you, so you let other males use you to spite him." "I never slept with anyone," she insisted. "Really?" His hand slid lower. Her whole body went rigid. "You didn't want revenge after watching him with his lovers?" Yes. No. Maybe it turned you on. His fingers etched between the warmth of her thighs. Her core tightened in reflex, trying to shut him out. He didn't force his way, yet. No. His palm slapped down between her legs, a jolt of shock tearing through her. Not even a little? Lyra bit down so hard her jaw throbbed, not only from anger, but from fighting her own treacherous body. Heat churned low, rising like a storm she couldn't stop. The Lykan king was her mate. Her body was tuned to him, to want him. As long as the bond existed, she belonged. She could hate him, curse him, wish him dead, but if he exerted power, her body answered. No, she said, voice breaking. Then why aren't you happy? His tone was a jeer. Your former mate preferred other females. Here I am, choosing you. Is this how you receive a mate who wants you? He was mocking her. Of course he was. He didn't want her, he wanted control. He wanted to use her whenever he pleased and call it fate. Hypocrite. He was the one who preached about goddess-given mates. Hopelessness pressed on her sternum. There was no one else for her. Julian was her second-chance mate. She wouldn't be granted a third, and he was the Lykan king. Antagonizing him wouldn't help. So, why not? Why not act obedient? She could be the powerless Omega they all expected. If she kept defying him, he'd only push harder. But if she gave him nothing to break, maybe he'd lose interest. Maybe later, there'd be a way out. When his fingers drifted lower again, she shifted her hips, angling to make it easier. That's a good slut, he said, pushing past her resistance. The invasion made her whole body seize. All worked up and needy. If you want something, stop pretending and ask. Lyra forced a breathy sound past her lips and rocked with the motion he set, playing at compliance. Disgust and unwanted heat twisted together until she couldn't tell where one ended and the other began. He withdrew, hand gone. The bed lifted as his weight left it. She rolled onto her back without thinking, reaching for him with her eyes. Her wolf whimpered, desperate to close the distance. Ray wanted the bond sealed, now. Lyra wished she could leash that instinct, but she was no better. A hollow ache pulled at her, the bond tugging at every frayed edge. He wanted it too. She could see it in the tension braced across his shoulders, in the tight line of his mouth. Just get it over with already. You'd better sleep, he said, turning for the door. You'll be busy tomorrow. A small, helpless sound broke from her throat. She swallowed it down as he opened the door and left. She dressed with stiff fingers, the room suddenly too bright, too quiet. Was she fooling herself, thinking obedience might shift something in him? He didn't trust her. Wouldn't he think she was trying to play him? If not that, then escape. But how? This was the royal palace. Security here was ironclad. Getting out of Devon's pack had been hard. This would be near impossible. Still, she sat on the edge of the bed, breath unsteady, and tried to assemble the pieces of a plan from the ruins of the night. Chapter 10. The Attack. I think he is different, Ray said after Lyra had slipped back into bed. Lyra frowned into the dark, wondering if they were even talking about the same person. Different how? If by different you mean worse than Devon, then... Ray was quiet for a long moment. Finally, she said, I don't think he's as bad as Devon. Because he hasn't forced me to watch him with another female yet? Lyra's voice went bitter. I'm sure that day will come. Or maybe he'd force her to do something far worse. His voice echoed in her skull, cold as iron. Should I bring another male who is not your mate? Ray began, then trailed off. What? Lyra asked. He hates you because he thinks you have rotten behavior, Ray said softly. if you could show him the truth. And how am I supposed to do that? Annoyance pricked under Lyra's skin. He thinks everything that comes out of my mouth is a lie, and I think he wants it that way. He doesn't want an Omega Queen, so he'll take any excuse to shun me. He could just get rid of you, Ray said. Why hasn't he done it yet? He doesn't have to answer to anyone. Maybe he doesn't want to risk the goddess's wrath, Lyra muttered. Also, what happens if others find out the king himself rejected his mate? His authority would be questioned. That no one knows you're his mate, Ray said. His beta must know. I think he does. Still, he could get rid of you secretly. So why do you think he's keeping me around, besides wanting to humiliate me and use me for release? Lyra asked. Do you think a Lykan king like him would have any other use for an Omega like me? Ray had no answer. The silence only pressed Lyra deeper into the mattress. He hadn't treated her better than Devon, not once. The next day turned out even worse than the first. As soon as Lyra stepped into the kitchen in her maid's uniform, a dozen hostile eyes swung her way. Here she comes, one of them said, striding up to Lyra. She crossed her arms and looked Lyra up and down, her mouth twisted in a sneer. The king's new whore. I wonder what she did to get his attention, another murmured, circling Lyra like a vulture. I don't see anything special. Maybe she bewitched him, the first one offered. Without warning, she grabbed a fistful of Lyra's hair and yanked her head back. She looks like the kind who traps other females' males. Lyra reached up, trying to pry the girl's fingers free, but the grip only tightened. Do you think you're better than us? Her attacker hissed, shoving Lyra to the floor. Jealousy burned in the maid's eyes. The Lykan king had never stepped into their dormitory before until he came for Lyra. She was prettier than Lyra, she told herself, and yet the king never spared her a second glance, not even when she threw herself in his path. Even if she bewitched him, a third female chimed in, it won't last. Didn't you hear her last night? Who'd want to sleep with someone who sounds like that twice? Maybe he didn't even touch her, the second one said. Maybe he took one look and left, disgusted. Didn't you see how she was walking like a broken doll? The third maid asked. He must have given it to her good. She just got here, and she already has time to go around seducing males, the first one said. She snatched up a bowl brimming with soup. Let's give her something to keep her busy. She tipped the bowl. Hot broth splashed across the tiles, spreading in a steaming slick. Lyra jerked back just in time to keep her uniform clean. Oops, the female cooed. You need to clean that up before we start work, so hurry. Why should I clean it? Lyra demanded, pushing to her feet. You dumped it. It's your job to clean this area, and it's dirty now, the maid replied. Better get on with it, unless you want to pay for making everyone late. Lyra saw Thea standing in the kitchen doorway, watching. Thea, who supervised the maids and checked their work. Thea's gaze slid away. She turned and walked off without a word. What are you waiting for? The second maid snapped, shoving Lyra's shoulder. Get to work. Lyra stumbled back a few steps. Heat flared in her cheeks, anger and shame. She hated that she was weaker than these Omegas. Without a shift, she was no stronger than a human, easy to push around. She should get on her knees and lick it up, the third one said. Be grateful for the early lunch, right, girls? Brilliant idea, the leader said. At this rate, Thea won't give her any food. We're actually saving her. You heard them, princess. On your knees, the second one taunted. We don't have all day. You can fuck off, Lyra seethed. What did you say to me? The maid snapped. You can lick it up yourself, Lyra shot back. The servant lunged and slammed Lyra into the counter. Pain flared along Lyra's spine, but she gritted her teeth, grabbed the female's arms, and shoved her away. "I'll teach you a lesson," the maid snarled, eyes bleeding red. Lyra's heart kicked hard, red eyes, shifting. The other's eyes flashed the same hungry crimson. Lyra yanked up her skirt and drew the dagger strapped to her thigh. The steel flashed. "Stay away from me." The leader, Claire, laughed. "Wow, I'm terrified." Lyra tightened her grip. Fine. She had nothing to lose. If they came at her, she'd slash and keep slashing. They had their wolves. She had her blade. One maid stripped off her uniform, and in the next heartbeat, a gray wolf crouched in front of Lyra, lips wrinkling back from its teeth. Lyra backed toward the rear door. The other maids followed, bodies rippling, bones cracking as they shifted and stalked after her. The first wolf leapt. Lyra slid sideways and retreated out into the backyard, boots hitting dirt. Out here, she had room to move, room to read their patterns. But there were 3 of them, and they were wolves. She slashed once, steel-kissing fur and skin. A yelp tore free as her blade cut the shoulder of one she-wolf. It was the only hit she landed before another slammed into her, driving her to the ground. Cold earth punched the breath from her. She thought they wouldn't dare really hurt her, but a muzzle hovered inches from her face, hot breath washing over her skin, and she realized they didn't intend to hold back. Could Omegas do whatever they wanted in the royal palace? The wounded she-wolf circled Claire and shouldered the other aside. She swept a paw and hooked her claws deep into Lyra's shoulder. Lyra screamed. Fire streaked down her arm. She grabbed for the wolf's leg, but another set of jaws clamped around her forearm and bit down. Pinned, helpless, at their mercy. Ray begged her to yield, to plead. No. Lyra locked her stare on Claire's eyes, defiant, unblinking. Claire raised her paw again, claws ready, then froze. Fear flashed through her wolf gaze. All 3 she-wolves stilled. Claire sprang off Lyra. Lyra clutched her torn shoulder with her uninjured hand and turned her head toward the intruder who had stopped them cold. A male stood there, tall, handsome, fair-haired, his alpha aura thrumming through the air. Lyra's defenses spiked as he approached, but he only stooped, steadying her as he helped her sit up. He frowned, eyes tracing her wounds. Then those blue-green eyes met hers. In a calm, non-threatening voice, he asked, "What happened?"